Hi everyone, welcome to this event today on Open SDG, Data Reporting for Sustainable Development. My name's Jessica Espey and I'm the Director of SDSN TReNDS, one of the hosts of this event alongside the UK Office of National Statistics, the Mayor of LA's office, Code, Bristol, the City of Bristol and their One City programme, and the Open SDG Consortium. It's lovely to be with you all today. I'm just going to be moderating this event, but to formally kick us off, we're going to turn to Jean Home. Jean is the Chief Data Officer of the City of Los Angeles, working on issues ranging from homelessness to digital equity and bringing together data science, immersion technologies, and public-private partnerships to bring innovation across the City of Los Angeles. So with that, Jean, can I ask you to turn on your camera and say a few words of welcome when you're ready? Thanks very much.
Great. Yeah, my camera is on.
Great, we can see you well.
Perfect. Thanks. Welcome today to everyone participating. It's exciting to bring together these three different areas of open data, open source, and the SDGs. There's a lot to be said about bringing the Sustainable Development Goals down to a local level. When we think about the SDGs normally at the country level, they're sweeping reforms, they're also sweeping data. And when we bring it down to a local level, it becomes extraordinarily actionable. So as we start to think about gender equity, our climate action, our poverty, our hunger, when we bring it down to the level of a city, it is much easier to see the path from where we are today to where we want to be on that goal line in 2030. And as a result, it's been very helpful here in Los Angeles. I have a unique perspective on this. I was part of the open data team for the US government, building data.gov in concurrence with the UK's amazing effort with open data as well. And then I later left to go to the World Bank, where I worked on developing some of the indicators behind the SDGs. So I see these two different aspects, knowing how important it is that we use this structure to be able to help guide and govern us, to hold us accountable as a government, even at the local level, and to provide transparency into the work that we do every day. The only way we're going to achieve the goals together is by doing things together and by being transparent about where we have gaps and where we are moving forward. The topic for today, particularly on the open SDGs, is really a wonderful way for cities to be able to affordably and quickly stand up the ability to do this work. Using the open source code that you'll hear about today and being able to create an instance for each of your cities or each of your areas that helps you realize the framework and the strategy that you want to do, but put it into a way that everybody can see and understand what's happening at your city is really a powerful tool. So you'll hear from folks on either side of the ocean and from folks from different kinds of perspectives today as we go forward in looking at how we're going to do this together. Back to you, Jess.
Great. Sorry, just turning my video back on. Thank you so much, Jean, for those introductory remarks. Just a few points of housekeeping. I should have mentioned these at the beginning that you'll see on the slide on your screen. Yes, a reminder to please keep your microphone on mute. Only panelists are going to be able to jump in with questions. If you have questions that you want to ask throughout the session, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A box. You'll see at the bottom of your screen a little box that says Q&A, questions and answers. So please pop them in there and we will get to them as soon as we can. The chat box, which you'll also notice, is open for you all to use to communicate with one another and share links and so on. So please do feel free to use that. And please note that this webinar is being recorded. And so the recording and presentations will be made available to everyone participating thereafter. So now we're going to move into the next section of the event, which is a panel discussion and some presentations. We're going to start with a presentation from colleagues from the UK Office of National Statistics and Code. Speaking to us today is Fiona, who's the head of the Sustainable Development Goals team at the UK Office of National Statistics. Lucy, who's the deputy head of the SDG Data website development team at the UK Office of National Statistics. And Brock Fanning, he's a data scientist for the Center for Open Data Enterprise and is a lead developer on the Open SDG project. So they're going to join us today to talk together about some of the technical aspects and functionalities of the Open SDG platform. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Fiona, Lucy, and Brock. Could I ask you to turn your videos on, please? Great, I can see Fiona. Fabulous. Let's just make sure everyone's up. And Brock, there you are. Lucy, we can't see you quite yet, so please do turn on. There we go. Great. All right, thanks so much. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Jess. So I'm going to talk very, very briefly. I'm Fiona Dorr, head of the Sustainable Development Goals team at the UK Office for National Statistics. So we are the National Statistics Institute for the UK, and our remit is to source and report data for the UK to be able to monitor our progress towards the SDGs. We focus very much on providing as much data as possible for the indicators, and at the moment we are reporting 78% headline data for the indicators. Most of our data sources are official statistics, and we're looking at how we can supply data for the 22% of indicators where we have no data, and more importantly, or as importantly, how we can disaggregate the data that we have to be able to show it, to break down and to leave no one behind. And we're looking at all different kinds of sources, including qualitative, citizen generated data, and we're developing a protocol to be able to do that. So we needed a platform to be able to report our data, and we are working in partnership with Code and with the US government to develop the Open SDG data platform. And in order to be able to source the data, we work in partnership as well. So we work across government, academia, businesses and charities to look and source that data that we need. And as Jean was saying, what's so important is to be able to support local reporting, because that's where the activity for the SDGs is going to happen. And a key leave no one behind disaggregation is region and local level data. And that's why we're so excited to be here to be talking about how we're trying to support local reporting in the UK, particularly with our colleagues in Bristol. So I'm not going to talk for very much longer, but if I could have the next slide, please. And from this slide, you'll be able to see this shows where Open SDG is being used to report data in different countries, different regions, and in different cities. In 2017, the UK were looking for a platform, and we spoke to colleagues in the US and asked them about their platform and realised that it probably had the functionality that we needed. And then working with data scientists in ONS, we then developed it further to be able to have an improved disaggregation functionality. And then we started working more with the Centre for Open Data Enterprise and merged our codes. And over time, we're now one of the lead developers of the Open SDG platform. And we're trying to build a community between Open SDG users, so all these countries and other users of the platform, so we can share experiences. So I'm going to pass over to Lucy and to Brock, who are going to talk much more about the functionality and about the support available for people that want to adopt the platform.
Thank you, Fiona. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so I'm just going to start by talking about some of the features that are available with Open SDG and the principles that drive the development of Open SDG. So first of all, Open SDG is open source. It only uses open source or free libraries and software, and it's free to use. It's collaborative, so as Fiona just said, the UK and US governments and Code came together to create Open SDG. But now we have countries who contribute their code and share their experience to make it more into an open source community. It's fully customizable, so it comes with built-in customizable features, so countries can make changes to how their platform looks without needing any developer resource. But if a country does have developer resource and want to make further changes, this is also possible. It's multilingual, so currently platforms can be created in any of the 6 UN official languages, as well as some others such as German and Armenian, and then there's also the possibility to add further languages. It's interoperable, so data and metadata can be uploaded to and downloaded from a platform in a variety of formats. So for example, data is available from platforms in Open CSV format, as well as JSON and GeoJSON. When developing Open SDG, we make sure that we focus on the user needs to ensure that any changes that we implement to features or functionalities, that they are actually of use to end users of the platform. And then finally, when we develop Open SDG, we also ensure that it's accessible. So the UK's Open SDG platform has undergone accessibility testing, and the results from this testing have been fed back into Open SDG. So any countries who use Open SDG can also take advantage of this. So it's been developed to meet AA accessibility standards, and it's tested to work with various devices, browsers, and assistive technologies. So that's sort of an outline of, as I said, the features, but I'll just pass on to Brock Bannon from Code now, who will talk a little bit more in depth.
Thank you, Lucy. Okay, so this is an example of the homepage for the platform. This is one of 2 alternative homepages, and this version has a variety of customizable portions. The language at the top, the 17 goals to transform our world, that title is configurable, as well as the paragraph beneath it and the image over the logo on the right. All of the text above the goal icons is configurable. And the sections down at the bottom, we call them cards. Those are configurable as well. And there can be any number of those cards. The user will click on these goal icons here and be brought to the goal page. And if I could get the next slide, please. This is one of 3 different alternatives for the goal page. This goal page is a listing of indicators. It displayed hierarchically with the targets. So the targets are on the left, and then the indicators shown on the right. Each indicator is a link to another page. Displaying this screenshot here shows that it doesn't have to only be the global indicators. It can show national or local indicators as well. In this example, you can see that there are some indicators with customized ID numbers. And also further differentiating them are some tags. There are some yellow tags below them, below the indicators saying national. That tag functionality can, you can put any number of tags and other tags as well. So the user will click on the indicator here and be taken to the indicator page. Can I get the next slide, please? This is a close-up of the indicator page. This is showing the disaggregation functionality that was mentioned earlier. The sidebar on the left shows all of the subcategories, all of the disaggregations, and Open SDG sort of analyzes your data and decides what disaggregations make sense for this particular for this particular indicator based on the data that's available. And the user expands those drop downs there and then chooses a value from the available options. And when the user does that, a line appears on the chart. So each choice will create a new line on the chart, or a bar if it's a bar chart. And there's also, as you can see, a table tab at the top. Users can switch over to the table visualization instead and see it more like a spreadsheet. And in that case, each disaggregation choice becomes a column on the table. Next slide, please. A third type of visualization. This is a map. This would display next to chart and table. This would be a third tab there called map. And this is optional for any indicator that is configured to display a map. This will appear. It displays an aggregation of each year. you can see that there is a legend on the top right showing the min and max values. There's zooming functionality and full screen functionality, as well as a search feature for finding a particular region. And then on the bottom, there's a slider for going back and forth across the years, or just playing them like a slideshow. And also I should mention that as you zoom in and out, it's possible to have multiple layers of boundaries. So you can have more granular layers as you zoom down. For example, you can see regions at the top, and then as you zoom in, you could see counties or something else. Next slide, please. And another feature, this is a page that's generated out of the box with Open SDG, showing the reporting status. This is a report of how complete or incomplete each indicator is. You can see on the left, the screenshot is showing the default breakdown, which is by goal. It shows all the goals, and for each goal, what the percentage of indicators that are complete or incomplete. The types of status that are there available there are customizable. You can add your own types of status, but Open SDG comes with those the types that you see there. And then on the right, you can see an example of using any other metadata field. You can use any field to show this breakdown. And in this case, it's showing an example of a breakdown by the UN Custodian Agency. And so that's just a overview of a few of the kind of high level features in Open SDG.
Amazing. Thanks very much, Brooke.
Okay. So we just have a couple more slides about Open SDG. So one country who's decided to use Open SDG for the reporting is Germany. And like Brooke said, national and global or local indicators can all be reported on one platform, but Germany have actually decided to split it out into two. One platform for their global, one for their national, but they're actually quite closely linked, and there's a number of places on each of the sites where you can get back and forth. Next slide, please. So here you can see some of the customizations Germany have made to the look and the feel of their platforms. So for example, they've added some navigation options. Next slide, please. And another customization they have made is to the metadata section. So here on the right, on the national platform, they've added an indicator status summary metadata tab, where you can see the progress against the indicator compared with different years. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you are interested in using Open SDG like Germany, we have lots of support available. So available online, we have a quick start guide and lots of documentation to help you set up a platform. And then we also have a number of case studies available from countries who have already implemented Open SDG. If you are thinking of using Open SDG, then please let us know at one of these email addresses. We do like to know when people are using it. It's nice to see how it's spreading. And also we will be able to point you in the right direction if you do need any support. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Fiona, Lucy and Brooke. That was a brilliant overview of all the sort of different potential and functionality you can get from using the site, which is fabulous. Now we're gonna sort of see this in action and look at Open SDG as it's been localized to the city of Los Angeles. So we've got Dawn Comer and Angela Kim who are going to be talking to us now. Dawn worked with the Mayor's Fund for Los Angeles to localize the SDGs to LA and to develop and implement an open data platform to track the city's progress towards the goals. And Angela is the SDG Data Associate in the Office of the Mayor of Los Angeles. So Dawn and Angela, over to you. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Jessica. And it's great to see the amount of customization that is happening with the Open SDG platform. So what we'll talk about today is just sharing how we embarked on the journey definitely with support from Code. I worked closely with Brock last year, so we want to thank Code as well as the Hilton Foundation for their support in our efforts. So last year, in 2019 at the HLPF, we launched our first voluntary local review as well as the local SDG platform. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen is the view of our platform, which as Brock and Lucy mentioned, is very customizable. So while the VLR is a point in time in our narrative of our commitment to the goals, the reporting platform continues to be a living resource beyond the VLR to report our progress towards the goals. Next slide, please. As the platform was forked from a national level, this is where we took the time to really work on customization to meet some of the needs to support our local government's perspective. Specifically, one of the first things we noticed was at the national level, the US and UK platforms show the goals and indicators. As you saw on some of the slides from Lucy and Brock, the platform is customizable where you can also begin to show the target level. So as we had taken the steps to localize the target language within the city of Los Angeles, we needed to make sure those were displayed on the platform. But also we took a bottoms-up approach looking at local data to begin to also localize the indicators as they were applied to the city. So this led us to developing new indicators and thereby updating the code to include the tags that you see on the screen. The tags here show new for some of the indicators that definitely are tailored to the city of Los Angeles. And you'll also see that these are reported online, so meaning that we found the data that tells our story about how we're making the progress towards the goals. All reporting data was sourced publicly from available resources. It's important to note that at a local city level, there may be data that's not governed by city jurisdiction. For example, public health data that supports SDG 3 is available from county services versus city-run services. So to address the progress of how we're serving Angelenos, data sources may be city, county, metropolitan statistical area, and or state level data. Next, my colleague Angela will share more information about the progress we've made on the platform since its launch.
Sorry, let me go back to the slide. Hi everybody, so as Dawn mentioned, we've done a lot of work on localizing the global framework and have added several new indicators that reflect our local priorities here in Los Angeles. And the flexibility of the Open SDG platform has allowed us to customize the global framework as well as develop some new functionalities that I'm gonna talk about a bit later. And as with national government, here in LA, we rely on several different data sources for our indicator reporting, including localized official national statistics. So about 23 of our indicators are being reported from localized US Census data, which is our national statistics. We're also using city-generated data, so municipal data, and we're using that for reporting on indicators related to sanitation, police, transportation, water, power. Also using global satellite monitoring for our SDG 611 reporting, community surveys that are led by our local universities. A lot of our indicators in SDG 3 on health are reported from those data sources. As well as exploring how we can use citizen science data. We are currently looking at how citizen science data from iNaturalist can be used for localized biodiversity reporting for SDG 15. And as with the global SDG framework and the global goals, leaving no one behind is a key component of our SDG localization and implementation efforts. Whenever possible, we disaggregate the data that we have by several demographic indicators, including gender, race, and age, like the global framework requires. but we're also identifying key indicators that require further disaggregation, either by geography or by additional demographic characteristics like sexual orientation and gender identity. And the added benefit of being a local government is that we can use this information and the disaggregation for targeted programs and services. For example, we're currently using the SDG indicators as a framework for measuring racial equity, as well as a lens through which we analyze social service allocations within local government. And I just wanted to show two features that we're working on right now. On the left, like Brock and Lucy mentioned in the beginning, the Open SDG platform is very flexible for different government agencies to add new features and functionalities. Here in Los Angeles, we're working on adding a trends line to our visualization so that we can better track progress and eventually do gap analysis. And on the right here is a prototype that we're working on so that we can share qualitative information, so activities that are being done in LA to advance the goals. This activities index is, we're hoping will complement the quantitative reporting that we're doing through Open SDG, so that at the same time as we track progress numerically, we can also report and highlight on the activities that are going on to mobilize the SDGs on the ground here in LA and bring more visibility to all the great work being done by our local partners, whether that be in government, private sector, civil society, as well as philanthropy. And we're hoping to launch this activity index this year, and both of them will be available publicly. They're both built on open source technology, so any other local government can use the same. But that's it for LA. Please post your questions in the Q&A box and we're happy to answer those.
Great, thank you so much, Angela. That's a brilliant illustration again of how you can customize the platform and really tailor it to local interests and needs and requirements. And also just, yeah, really impressive to see the kind of technical work that's gone into all of this on all of your behalf. So thank you. We're gonna have a 15-minute kind of discussion now amongst all the panelists, and then we'll go into an audience Q&A. So you've got 15 minutes. There are well over 100 of you on the line, so you've got 15 minutes to insert your questions. I hope there are gonna be loads bubbling up for a lively discussion. Oh, sorry, I realized, apologies for that. I've just said we're jumping straight into our moderated panel, but I'm missing a very important speaker. So before we do that, we're going to have one more 5-minute presentation to help inform our discussion. And that's going to be by Alan McLeod. Alan works in partnerships between Bristol City Office and the University of Bristol to help the citywide implementation and monitoring of the SDGs in Bristol. So sorry, Alan, over to you, and then we'll come back to our discussion. Thanks very much.
No worries, Jess. I'll keep it brief because, to be honest, Los Angeles are far further down the line in terms of the work that they're doing, but we're trying to adopt a very similar approach and trying to work in partnership with a number of organizations in our city. So I'm going to be focusing a little bit on some case studies around partnerships for data. But actually, one of the exciting things from our work in collaboration with Los Angeles and with the ONS is that going forward, Bristol is going to be working with the ONS to develop its own similar Open SDG data platform. And we're going to be looking into how we can reflect some of our quantitative data as well as our qualitative data. And that's been one of the key things for our work in Bristol, has been our approach at trying to adopt the SDGs with a citywide effort, trying to understand not just how the city government is delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals, but also how organizations and actors in the city are doing the same thing. And so that's been one of the keys to our SDG work in Bristol, and that is reflected in the voluntary local review that we presented last year at the United Nations. It was the first VLR in the UK and one of the first in Europe, and it had, as I said, case studies of activity from organisations in Bristol, as well as data and examples of what the City Council were doing towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's because we believe that to deliver on the SDGs, it's going to take a whole of society, a whole of city governments, not just city government, to deliver these goals. And so our VLR comprised of data for every single SDG with over 150 indicators, and where possible, similar to the platform that Los Angeles are using and to the approach that's embedded within the SDGs, we wanted to make sure that we were disaggregating by gender, by age, by ethnicity, and by geography. And as part of our work as well, we've been working to help other UK cities to think about how they can deliver on the SDGs. And as I said, we're working with the ONS to take this forward, but we've also written a handbook that helps to understand not just where the UK city data lies, but also how that qualitative data collection of case studies can be rolled out for any city around the world. If I go to the next slide, please. So for our work, we had a real focus on partnership towards the data, and that was partly because of the approach that we've adopted in Bristol. The work towards the SDGs and the localization of those goals has been heavily driven with support from the University of Bristol, from the Cabot Institute there, and we had a lot of support from academic collaboration to help find appropriate indicators, thinking around poverty, but also help fill some of the data gaps around where to find those indicators. We also, as I said, had a number of community activist groups represented in our VLR, all the way up to some of the large corporates in our city and how their policies are implementing the SDGs. And we try to use the city networks that we have to try and disseminate information about the SDGs, but also to draw in information that we then fed into our VLR and into our work on the SDGs. And next slide, please. And so just briefly, we've got 4 examples of some of the data partnerships that we use towards the goals. And this is a loose term in terms of partnerships. It was more of a collaboration in that we were able to reach out to some of the people that we'd already been working with, some of the members of our SDG Alliance, which is a city stakeholder network, to draw in data and information from them. So as you can see on the screen, Bristol Water, the water company for our city, were able to provide information about the water consumption. Some of the academics at the university and the Cabot Institute helped us figure out what the best metrics for monitoring poverty at the local level were. We also worked with Unseen and the police department, the Avon and Somerset Constabulary, to draw in information about the instance of modern slavery in our city. And lastly, we worked with the Bristol Tree Forum and Bristol City Council to pull information on the tree canopy cover in Bristol, trying to think about how we focus on biodiversity as we go forward. Yeah, so as I said, we're really excited to be working with the ONS going forward and partnering with them in thinking about how we can be sharing our experience of local data across the UK. But also we're excited to learn from the experience of Los Angeles in the development of a platform at the local level, and particularly thinking about how we can represent some of those case studies that we have in our VLR on that platform as well. So I'll hand back over to Jess and for the panel time now. Yeah, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, Alan. That was super speedy and very efficient. Lots of information in a very brief amount of time. Given that you were so efficient with your time, I think I'm going to fire a question to you first, actually, and just ask, you had lots of interesting partnerships there. It looks like it's been a big sort of citywide effort. But as you said, it's been a bit slower than LA and so on. I mean, still ahead of the curve. But what have been some of the sort of challenges of getting the, this big partnership effort off the ground and getting everyone to use the Open SDG platform to support the voluntary local review and the ongoing monitoring?
I think one of the challenges we've maybe faced has been around the engagement and the baselining of it all. People are really interested in trying to find out what the data towards the SDGs are, but the difficulty has come in pulling together that framework. And we did some pretty heavy work in trying to develop a framework for what our data looked like. But there was a lot of questions and sort of pushback on the styles and types of metrics that we were using and how we were reporting them and how regularly they were updated. And so we've worked quite closely with some of the data team at the City Council, as well as with the academics, to try and ensure that we have listened to as many voices as possible and listened to as many experts as possible to pull together the right data and monitor the right things. And actually, I think for us in Bristol, one of the key approaches that we've had to all of this work is that it's iterative, it's going to be ongoing, and we're going to be updating it as we go forward. And that's been one of the key approaches for our One City work as well. The City Office in Bristol is something that's we're refining and sharpening a lot of the work of the One City Plan and the City Office, and consequently our work on the SDGs as well. And so we've we've developed a data framework, we've developed a set of indicators that we want to be working on. But one of the really exciting things about the open data platform is that it is something that is easy to update and easy to work with. And so actually going forward, as we develop that data framework further, as we refine the work that we're doing, it's going to be really key that that platform is easy to use and easy to update. And that's one of the reasons why we're really interested in using this as a way of demonstrating our progress to the SDGs, because we recognize that, you know, issues like COVID can come up. We live in an uncertain world, and so there are challenges that will always be present, and we need to be able to respond and reflect on that quickly and have agility as we do that. So that's been one of the things that we wanted to try and ensure that we built into our operating system and the way that we work on data. And so that's been one of the keys for us, is having a platform and a tool that we can do that with, because our priorities and our plans will update and be refreshed, and we want to make sure that our data frameworks and our dashboards for that can do the same.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alan. Hopefully, while Alan's just been giving his remarks, you've all had a chance to look at the contact sheet that was put up on the screen. I'm now going to ask our colleagues to take the screen down so we can see all the speakers slightly bigger. That's great. And now if I could ask all of the speakers to turn their videos on, so we can have as much as possible a virtual debate. Great, so thank you. Hopefully you can all see all of our speakers now. That's brilliant. We've heard, I mean, so many exciting and positive things there about, you know, why to use this kind of approach in this platform. You know, I think one of the things that really resonates is it's a living resource and that you can use it iteratively. It gives you the opportunity for more disaggregations, different types of data, qualitative data, and so on. And it's really helped to foster some of these collaborations. So let's go into that in a little bit more detail. And I'm going to start with probably the most difficult question. So to colleagues from the City of Los Angeles, can you give us some thoughts, some examples of how using this platform, using this process and localizing the SDGs has really helped improve policy outcomes specifically? How has this whole exercise actually resulted in, you know, some demonstrable change?
Thanks for that question, Jess. I'm happy to get started. So in the localization process, we like to call our four-phase approach. So it's about mapping the SDG framework to our current policies and programs, and then doing a gap analysis to identify places where we might have to look deeper into, as well as the localization process. And then the fourth step is the most important one for us, and I think it's what we're talking about right now, is the mobilization, right? So how do we use all of this information that we're gathering, the mapping, the localization, the data analysis, to actually mobilize progress on the goals. And one example is that right now we have a group of 53 students as part of a cohort. There's a lot of them over a course of 10 weeks. They're working on 9 different projects to advance the goals here in Los Angeles. And almost all of the 9 projects were inspired by either an insight or a gap that we identified through the SDG localization process. And just a few examples, we have a group, one of the student teams is working on how to include LGBT populations into the SDG framework and which indicators need to be disaggregated by those demographic characteristics. We also have a group of students working closely with our Bureau of Sanitation and Environment to study how biodiversity can be measured in the local context. Because as we know, there's a lot of global satellite monitoring of biodiversity, but it's not useful for policy unless it's at the neighborhood level. So this group of students is working with the team in the Sanitation and Environment Bureau to use citizen science data or local level imagery data to identify the quality of biodiversity in our parks, and not just does a park exist in this neighborhood. So there's a lot of different examples. There's 7 other projects that I could talk about that have been inspired by the SDG localization efforts and are now mobilizing progress on that. We can share more. Amazing. It's going to be on our website, and for people who are interested, they can look there for updates.
Yeah, great. Please do put it on your website. I think it's really inspiring to see how, you know, this sort of technical processes can really deliver some practical change. Do any other colleagues in LA want to jump in and add to what Angela said?
Hi, thanks, Jessica. I'll just add that it is really important for the localization. Some of the other work I focus on is around digital inclusion. So we often look at who's connected and has, especially in this time of COVID, the importance of connectivity at home for students to do homework and parents to work all at the same time. But allowing us to disaggregate that data will allow us to really look and see neighborhood by neighborhood, the importance of understanding who is connected and who's not connected and some of the barriers that we have to address. So I think I'm looking forward to a lot of the projects as well as some other areas where we can continue to look at this data at this level.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dawn. We talked about how great this platform is. We talked about the different ways you can customize it and so on. A practical question, and this is perhaps for Brooke. What are the technical requirements that a country needs in order to adopt the Open SDG platform, and how intensive is it to maintain it?
There are no technical skills necessary to start the platform. We have a quick start in our documentation that can be done in just one sitting, and it doesn't require any technical skills. You can go through that quick start and then have a sort of blank slate implementation of Open SDG live. The technical skills that are required kind of come in as you want to do more and more customizations, and the amount of expertise necessary depends on what the extent of those customizations. So if you would like to change the look and feel of the platform, move things around, those are basic web technologies. So you need to know some HTML, some CSS, and JavaScript. Those are, again, necessary only if you need to do more advanced customizations. And on the data side, if you wanted to do some customizations of, say importing your data from some source that's not supported yet, or tweaking the data as it's being imported, something like that, that's done with Python. So you would need to know a little bit of Python in order to do that. But again, we strive to make the platform as customizable as possible using only configuration settings, and so that there's no code necessary for that. And we take the same approach with the data. We want to make everything manageable without having to write code. However, since it's open source and it uses a framework called Jekyll, which is also open source, the sky's the limit really in terms of the customization that you can do. And the only limiting factor is just the expertise and the time that you have. As far as maintenance goes, it's fairly easy to maintain the platform. We recommend a hosting setup which is based on using GitHub, and if you use this method, it's free, it's easy to set up, and there's no maintenance costs or really any effort involved in maintaining it. However, it's flexible, and some countries, for example, have chosen to do some of the parts of it in a different way, like hosting the platform, hosting the live version of the site, for example, using Amazon or some other location for hosting. However, it's out of the box. It's easy to set it up on GitHub for free.
Great, thanks, Brooke. And very happy to hear that you don't necessarily have to be a brilliant coder in order to use this website and so on. Also, it was nice to see, as you were talking about the minimal maintenance, that there were lots of nodding heads, particularly from colleagues in LA, and I think Lucy, so that's great. So one thing I sort of was thinking about is, in places where people don't necessarily have copious amounts of experience doing web development or coding or using Python or whatever, they might need some sort of support in order to get this up and running. I think this is something that ONS in particular, the Office of National Statistics, have been looking at, how you can support different countries to adopt the Open SDG platform and sort of do this monitoring themselves. So I don't know, Fiona or Lucy, do you want to share some remarks on the different kinds of support you've been giving to partners?
Yes, I could take that one if you're happy with that, Fiona.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so as Brock's already mentioned, we have developed Open SDG and its documentation so that countries that do have the skills and resources to be able to self-serve and develop a platform can, and there are countries who have done this. So for example, South Korea, Iceland, and also Madrid. But then in some cases support is needed, and ONS has provided some more substantial support to countries such as Ghana, Rwanda, and Kyrgyzstan through ONS's international work, and also the UNSD DFID project. So in these 3 countries, we've actually held in-country workshops to build capacity in populating and maintaining the Open SDG platform, as well as providing remote support. So when we go out to the countries, we'll sort of work with them to get their data in the right format so that they don't need to write any scripts or anything. So it's more just getting in the right format from the beginning. And then there's also countries which we've provided solely remote support, and the range of this support is quite varied. So for example, in some cases we've set up platforms and then pointed them to the guidance in our documentation to help with the populating of the platform. So this is something we've done quite recently with Sierra Leone. And then in other cases, the country has actually been able to set up and populate their platform, but they may need help with a troubleshooting issue. So for example, this is some work, this is work we've done with Moldova. And then apart from the work we do to support countries in implementing Open SDG, we also provide some support to countries through the Inclusive Data Charter. So this isn't really too much around the platform, but actually the data they need to put into the platform. Because setting up the platform, as Brock said, can be done in one sitting, but a more lengthy process is actually having the data to put in there, collecting the data and the metadata. So we do have an IDC technical advisor on our team who provides support to IDC champions, so the Inclusive Data Charter, to help them develop action plans so they're able to identify data gaps and priorities.
Okay. Great, thanks Lucy. I'm aware that we're running tight on time, and I want to take some of the questions that have come from the audience. In particular, a very timely question that someone, unfortunately they haven't given their name, but it's put up about COVID-19. And Fiona, I wonder if I could kick this to you. The question is, do you think that the coronavirus epidemic has sort of hindered countries' progress towards starting to establish these platforms, start monitoring sustainable development goals and so on? You know, or do you think that actually the crisis has, you know, encouraged more people to think about, right, we need to be holistically monitoring all of our well-being and sustainable development outcomes, and we need tools like this to do it? What's your sense?
So I think it's the latter, actually, because I think it's brought much more to the public's view the inequalities in society and the need to be able to have the data that's going to help us to build back better is one of the key phrases for COVID-19 response. So I think the SDGs provides that kind of framework that will allow us to see behind the headlines and see who are the people in society that are being left behind and need some more resources, etc., put in there. So in the UK, for example, there's been a lot of reporting about the ethnicity and the inequality in ethnicity in terms of likelihood of getting COVID-19, the gender and age and deprivation. And I think actually this has shown that the need for disaggregated data is much more important. And in ONS, we're looking at having a task force working towards looking at what inclusive data do we need to be collecting more of in the UK to be able to answer those kind of questions.
Thanks, Fiona. That's really positive to hear, because, you know, with people having so many other pressing concerns on the plate, you do worry that the broader picture could be lost. But of course, it's hugely important that we look at broad aspects of well-being and disaggregating different people's experiences. There was a question about the data for SDG 10, which relates to inequalities. And I'd be interested, Jean, maybe for your reflections on, how difficult is it to find the kinds of good quality data you need to monitor disaggregated outcomes? And, are there acute differences between the sort of national level data, state level data, and district level data? That's a question that was raised by Dr. Sinha, who's a bit in the chat box. Jean,
sure.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Jess. So I do think that it ends up being a combination. There's some data that we just don't collect at a local level, particularly data around poverty, for example, gets collected at some very robust ways nationally, and then it gets disaggregated. So in some cases we point to national data, but then the local disaggregated data for our area. In other cases, we're using data that really is coming up from the city, from departments, and the kinds of ways in which we're providing services, or other regional data. And then I also saw a question about additional data sources. And I know on data.gov that we brought in some non-traditional sources. So not only federal and county and state and local data, but we also brought in data that was validated like by an academic research partner. And so, for example, in Los Angeles, one of our gold sources of homelessness data is a count that's done by the United Way, which is a nonprofit organization. And that becomes authoritative data for us. So I think it's really interesting to look at this. The flexibility of this platform gives you that ability to make the best local decision for what you think your authoritative data is. But it's, as we pointed out, it is relatively an easy technical lift, and I'm a technologist, so like I was pleasantly surprised at the ease of doing all of this. And it's really making sure you have the data that's authoritative and timely to be able to get the best information you can.
Amazing, thanks, Jean. I think you've also answered one of the other questions that was raised by Alejandro about what are the criteria for including certain types of data versus others, and really it is a sort of hyperlocal decision, subject to understanding the quality and the background and the metadata and so on associated with the other data sets. So that's great. Another question that's come in that, Brooke, I might ask you is, how easy is it to customize the platform for groups that are not necessarily, national, federal, state level actors? Can you use it for NGOs? Could you use it for very specific local geographies? Can it be tailored to any kind of collective, group?
Yes, in my opinion, it's very easy. You could just as easily be for a university or a country. I think it's very flexible. And because there's tabs at the bottom of each meta and the different. So if you're setting this up at the local level or for an organization, then the term national metadata wouldn't really apply. And so there's a configuration item to change that word to something else. So you could have like local metadata instead of national. So the little tiny tweaks like that are available throughout the platform to have it make sense for whatever organization or locality it's being used for. And so the platform itself doesn't really change overall. It's one basic platform, but you can tweak the little bits here and there to have it fit your need.
Amazing, thank you so much, Brooke. Dawn and Angela, one of the questions that's come in has been about, do you think that the platform should be sort of mandatory for all voluntary local reporting and voluntary national reporting? Do you think that it's sort of a really useful tool to keep going alongside just a report? What's your experience of that? Either of you want to jump in?
I can start, and then Dawn can add anything that I miss. We've been saying this a lot in webinars that we participate in, that the product itself is not where the value is. It's in the process, right? So you can set up Open SDG fairly quickly, like Brock and Lucy have brought up. But as Jean mentioned, I think the actual work is in identifying the local sources of data. And through that process of having those conversations with your colleagues internally, finding out who owns these different data sources and what are the different levers of change that we have within, city government or through our partners in civil society to actually bring about progress on the sustainable development. So I don't think it should be mandatory that every city that does a VLR should also just have a dashboard or a data repository. But going through the process of identifying those data sources is very useful.
I agree. Yeah, Angela's covered it well. So I have nothing to add. But what I will add is, as a lot of asked about the ease of setting it up, it really is easy because I hadn't done coding in a long time. So I just want to reiterate that it was very, very simple to set up, and the support from Code and Brock was really helpful for us.
Great, thanks, Dawn. Related to which, there's someone who's jumped in saying that, if you're a small organization and you're looking to start using this platform and so on, and you need some help or experience, where's the best place to go to start and to get some support? Lucy, do you want to answer that question?
Hi, sorry, could you just repeat that? I think it cut out a little bit in the middle.
Sure. So the question is, if you're a small organization, sort of a startup looking to try and work with local government on the SDG framework, and perhaps you want to use the Open SDG platform, where should you go to get some support and assistance?
So in regards to getting support to actually setting up an Open SDG platform, I think there's been a couple of links posted in the chat around for the Open SDG documentation. So there's a tab on there where there's email addresses for support. And then regarding the localization side of things, I think LA have said they've made some stuff available for countries who also want to go down that route. I'm not too sure about that, so I'm not sure if Angela or Dawn, you just wanted to mention a little bit more about that.
Sure, by all means. Dawn or Angela?
Yeah, all the localizations that Dawn did in the beginning to move the national level Open SDG to LAs, it's all written out step by step in a wiki in GitHub, and we can share that link as well. It can also be found on our website.
Amazing. Please do share that link in the subsequent email or in the chat box if you're able. Thanks, Andrew and Dawn. Fiona and Alan, I'm going to give you guys the final remarks because we're nearly at the top of the hour. Alan, a first question for you, which is, how do you think we can, one of the questions that's come in is, how do you actually show impact? So as much as these platforms are brilliant for collating data, starting to show kind of progress in a more timely and coherent way, is there a way you think that we should be using these kinds of technologies to actually try and better communicate the impact of all these initiatives?
I think one of the ways to do that is with the output of a VLR, and part of what Angela was saying about the process of undertaking a VLR is one way of demonstrating the impact. You can start speaking to people and communicating to people the impact, and from a platform like this, you're able to draw the information much easier to produce the VLR and to share that information. But I think there's also it's also just sharing the stories, sharing the case studies from what's going on within local areas, within organizations. And it's really exciting to see that that's something that Los Angeles have built into their platform. And that's something that we're considering how we can do ourselves. And so I think demonstrating impact is partly through the data that you have and the progression towards the goals that can be demonstrated once you have those data in a effective system like the Open SDG platform, but also through demonstrating it with the stories and with the lives that are impacted. And that's where you're able to do that as you build this platform out and use it more to communicate some of the qualitative examples as well.
Great, thanks, Alan. Fiona, you get the final word, and you've got a sort of your elevator pitch, if you will, in the last minute. What would you say, just to summarize all of this, what do you think are some of the biggest advantages of taking this approach of, using an Open SDG platform and the kinds of data collation and monitoring that we've been hearing about?
So I think it speaks to Goal 17 and working in partnership. So I think that's the big thing about Open SDG is the community and being able to collaborate. And so if we make a mistake in what we do in the UK in terms of creating our platform, then people can learn from our mistakes just as we can learn from good practice from other people as well. And I think I can't remember if it was Angela or Dawn who said the VLR is a moment in time that shows you what your country is doing in terms of progress, and what the Open SDG and the platform gives you is that current picture and the moving progress in time. And I think that's what Open SDG gives us.
Amazing, very succinctly put. So thank you so much, Fiona, for those final remarks. Thanks also to Jean, Dawn and Angela from the City of LA, from Lucy and Fiona, who've come from the Office of National Statistics, to Brock from Code, and to Alan, who's been representing City of Bristol. And that was a brilliant discussion. And I really hope you'll all be following up on the resources that were posted in the chat, and reading more of the materials made available, and also come back to us all if you have questions. And I believe Angela or colleagues from LA will be sending out a summary to all of the participants soon. So thank you so much for your time, and have a good rest of your morning or evening, wherever you are. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.